that first job out of the military probably isn't going to be their last job.
Right.
They're gonna get there. They're gonna figure out what civilian life is like. They're gonna make those adjustments, and then they're gonna realize either that they love what they're doing, or they don't like what they're doing, or they're not getting paid enough, and they're gonna go and move on to the next position. I think accepting that early on makes the job hunt so much easier because it's less stressful, right?
You're listening to the 7 Echo Podcast, brought to you by 7 Eagle Group, the place where we highlight inspiring and interesting United States military veterans who have found a successful civilian career after trading in their uniforms.
Today, I am so excited to be talking with a really special guest. Mike Holmes lives in Tacoma Park, Maryland, works for one of the top recruiting agencies in DC called the McCormick Group as an executive search consultant. He focuses on defense and technology. Mike had a really distinguished career in the military. He served as a lieutenant colonel. He's retired, spent 30 years, did tours in Afghanistan, Iraq, Kosovo, and military intelligence. So just a really fascinating guy who cares deeply about the military community. And that's why I'm so excited to talk with you today, Mike.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story. And I want to get into it with you. So talk a little bit about what made you enlist in the Army. I mean, what drew you to the career in service?
I always wanted to be a soldier. I mean, whenever the kids would get together and we were playing cowboys and Indians, I wanted to be the cavalry guy. You know, that was it. I didn't know if I wanted to be in the Navy or the Air Force or whatever. Changed every week, but yeah, that's what I wanted to do. And so at the age of 19, I was not doing terribly well in college. Wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Went down to the recruiting station and signed up as a 19 Delta Cavalry Scout.
Wow, that's great. Do you come from a military family, or?
Not really. My dad was a Marine, but long before I was born. All of my uncles, to avoid the draft, they went to ROTC and spent a couple of years doing something in one of the services. Seems like the Air Force was what most of them went into. But no, we weren't. Nobody was really career. I had one uncle who was career, but we never saw him because he was career Navy, so he was always gone. But it was just something that I had always wanted to do, and I never could think of anything else that I would even want to do outside of the military.
Wow, where did you grow up?
I grew up in a little place called Ocala, Florida. And a Florida native. I was there until I was 13 years old, and we had a family tragedy, and things were not going well for me, and so I got sent off to military school. That probably helped my desire as well, but it didn't spoil me on it. So from the age of 13, from the 8th grade on, I was in military school.
Wow. Now, I know you had a long career in the military, 30 years. Looking back, what do you appreciate the most about that time in the military? What are some of the things you look back and say, wow, that was awesome. It made me into the man I am today.
You get to do so many different things in the military that you would never even think of doing outside. Back in the 80s, when I joined, 1985, things were a little looser than they are now. The first time I rappelled in my life was out of a helicopter. Nobody even taught me. They just assumed I had done it somewhere. And so, out the side, and at an air show, no less. So, I couldn't screw it up. It was, but it's things like that. I mean, you blow things up, you run around in the woods, a great time with people. You meet some really interesting people. And you do some hard stuff with them, freezing at night and all of that sort of thing. And you look back sometimes and think, damn, that was dangerous. I probably shouldn't have done that. But yeah, it was just a heck of a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And there are times, obviously, when it was not fun. At war, there were times when it was certainly not fun and very stressful. But even that, you're with great people, and you get through it. And that's something you never forget and never lose.
Yeah, I imagine you have some great memories and experiences and stuff that'll stay with you for a long time. So, talk now a little bit about your transition. Did you know what you want to do? Were you a little lost? What sort of was
So
going through your
I
head?
had several transitions because of 9/11. I had gotten out earlier in the 90s and went back to school, went to grad school, was doing that, and then 9/11 happened. I went back in. But I can tell you that with all the transition that I had, the thing that I think was the hardest was, especially that first one, leaving the Army, going back to grad school, was just figuring out that you weren't what your title was anymore. I mean, I was a soldier, I was an officer, I was an infantry officer. I could do those things. That first time around, I was infantry, and suddenly you're not. You're just a guy, and that was really hard. That took some getting used to. And the other things that I see now, looking back on it, and that I see with other veterans that I'm working with, are that you make a lot of assumptions when you're in the service about what life is like outside the service, about what jobs are like, and what it means to have a job, and the way other people think about their jobs. When you're in the service, it's not just a job; it is who you are. That's what you do, and you can't put it away. You're never not going to be a soldier. But that's not how the rest of the world thinks. And you get into a XYZ company, and suddenly they don't care about what happens after the shop closes. That's not their life. They go to work to make money, and then they leave work, and that's the rest of their life. And that's hard to have the sense of dedication that you had 6 months before, and you go into an environment where that's lost.
Yeah.
And then there's just simple things like the way you think things ought to be just often aren't that way, and yet you're still acting on it as if they were. And again, those assumptions about, because it was that way in the military, that's the way it ought to be everywhere else, and it just isn't. And I see an awful lot of people, their first time in a civilian job, it doesn't last very long.
Yeah.
And that's whether you're an E4 or an O4, it doesn't matter. You just, because you find out that you don't like it like you thought you did, or they don't like you like they thought they did, and that's kind of hard. The other thing that I see are that employers often have a set of assumptions about what it means to be a soldier, and the way you're going to be versus the way they think you're going to be, because they have this perception. It's a type of prejudice. It's not necessarily a bad prejudice, but it's something that you have to counter sometimes and say, look, it's just not that way. I don't act that way. I don't know of anybody in the Army that did act that way, but if they did, they might not be acting that way in civilian life either.
Right.
So it's there are a lot of challenges, and I think guys coming out looking for that first job really need to be thinking about that and aware of it and be willing to adjust.
How did you get over those challenges? Like, how did you deal with them? I mean, like you said, that's comes out of left field. You're living one way for 30 years or 4 years, and you come out and it's completely different than what you were just used to.
I think it's just, when you're older and you've already seen life a little bit, and you've had positions that weren't quite as structured as you might in an infantry battalion, you get to see life on the other side, and you get some perspective. So I think the perspective helps. Adaptability. You've just got to be adaptable and flexible, and not just in the situation, but understanding that people are going to be different. Take them on their own terms. Because of what I did in the service, especially in the latter parts of it, when I was working with Afghans in their in their units, in their homes, in their places of work, and surrounded by them, you had to make a lot of allowances for things that were just different and night and day different. Like that's just not the way they do things, and you weren't going to go and change them. You had to adapt to their ways in order to get them to accomplish what you wanted them to accomplish. And I think that helped me a lot. But a lot of soldiers don't have that opportunity. A lot of
Yeah.
soldiers, come right out of an infantry battalion or line battalion somewhere, and that's their life, that's their mindset, and they think everything ought to be a certain way, and they get disappointed.
Right. As you mentioned, a lot of the employers have a disconnect. They have a view of what a military guy or woman, is bringing to the table, and it's probably very on the surface, superficial.
Yeah.
Most hiring authorities are going to be civilians, just based on the numbers. What advice or suggestions would you have for that CEO, that HR director, VP? Why a veteran is a great addition to their team? What can a veteran bring to the table? You mentioned adaptability as one of them. What are some other things that they can bring that will just elevate the whole?
I think the biggest one is a sense of mission. We in the service, if we're successful, we're always thinking about what the mission is and how we're going to accomplish it. I mean, the saying back when I was a youngster was mission first, soldiers always. So we took care of the people, but it was all about getting the mission done. And I think that for a CEO, for hiring authority to hire a veteran, especially a long service veteran, they're going to get that. They're going to get somebody who comes in and says, all right, we got to accomplish this thing, whatever it is, manufacture X amount or sell this amount or whatever the thing that they need to accomplish is going to be. And they're going to throw their weight behind that.
Right.
And the other thing I think that comes out of that is veterans, because of the way that we're trained and the way we operate in the military, they're often thinking about 20 different ways to accomplish something. And they're going to adapt. They're not just going to sit there and turn the screw 50 times until the end of the day. They're going to find better ways. They're looking for better ways to be more efficient and to make a better end product. Again, whatever that's going to be. And I don't care whether, again, that's an O4 or an E4. That's just our mindset. We're going to do it. We're going to do it right. And we're going to do it until it's done. We're not just going to quit and give up and walk away.
Right. It's not a 9-to-5 mentality.
Yeah. I'm not going to lie. At this point in my civilian life, I've adapted to that. I've embraced that right now. When this show is over, I'm going to go back down to my kitchen and have a drink. But, and nobody's going to call me later. I don't care. But I'll be back at work tomorrow, and we're going to going at it again.
Yeah. Hey, you deserve that one, Mike. All right. So let's talk now about your current role as an executive search consultant. I know you focus on defense and technology in the DC corridor there. What advice would you have for veterans, either somebody transitioning, going for their first position, or somebody who's been out for a while and looking for a job? In my experience in the industry, I can conclude that veterans are incredible workers, but they don't always have the guidance, the mentorship to market themselves, to promote themselves when talking to a hiring manager. What's your take on that? That's
very true. They are the worst set of people, other than just an absolute recluse. They're the worst set of people that to advertise themselves, because that's not what we do. That's not how we get jobs in the military. Well, it is, but most of us, we just get an assignment and we go and we do it and we do our job. So what I would say to begin with is, if you're leaving the military, when you're leaving the military, yes, go take all of those classes and briefings that you got to do in transition, but find yourself a recruiter. Find yourself who's going to help you get to that next position, because they're going to draw those things out of you. What are your real qualities? How do you sell yourself? How do you say, here's the effect that I had in that position I was in. This is why they wanted me in the next position, because of the success I had here. And it doesn't take a whole lot, but they need to be open to it. But if you find a professional recruiter, somebody like yourself, somebody like me, that can help them figure out what their best qualities are and put themselves forward, it'll help almost all of them. Very few of them are natural marketers. They just aren't. Right. And they need that help. What advice would you have for the veteran who
just unsure, what do I want to do with myself? What career? There's so many options out there. And I know it's very discouraging for me when I see people who did something in the military and feel and think that's all they can do in the civilian world. They try to find the closest thing to what they did. And sometimes it works out great, but I think more often than not, they're not exploring all the incredible career
Yeah.
opportunities.
I would say honestly, the first thing the veteran needs to think of is that first job out of the military probably isn't going to be their last job.
Right.
They're gonna get there. They're gonna figure out what civilian life is like. They're gonna make those adjustments, and then they're gonna realize either that they love what they're doing, or they don't like what they're doing, or they're not getting paid enough, and they're gonna go and move on to the next position. I think accepting that early on makes the job hunt so much easier because it's less stressful, right?
Right.
It's
Yeah,
like
it doesn't
dating.
have to be the forever job. Like
Yeah.
you and I grew up in the 80s and before, that generation, they think, oh, I got to find something. I'll be there for the 30 years and get my retirement watch. It's not like that anymore.
No, yeah, it very much is like dating, and it should be,
Yeah.
because there's going to be a time when you walk into that office or that, whatever site it is that you're working, and go, oh man, I am just not feeling it today. And the cool thing about being a civilian as opposed to military is you can not feel it a lot and get the hell out of there. You can vote with your feet.
Yeah.
And if I would tell anybody, veteran or otherwise, if they really feel that, if they hate what they're doing, they need to get out of there,
Yeah.
because either they're going to get fired, or
Yeah.
they're just not going to be happy, and it's going to hurt their lives. That's how I got into recruiting. The previous job I had, I absolutely hated. I realized I'd made a terrible choice. Didn't want to do it anymore. It was making me physically ill to go there in the morning. And I just said, I got to get out of here. And I happened to fall in with something that I'm naturally good at and knew that I would be,
Mhm.
and enjoy, because all I do is network all day.
That's great advice. I so many people I feel just hang in there when they shouldn't, you got to just learn when you got to cut bait. Life's too short.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than getting up every morning and being excited to
Yeah.
get to work and get after it. And that's what makes life more enjoyable. I think if you have that stress, that pressure, chances are you're probably not in the right career path.
I was walking to the metro. I take the transit into work and back. And I was walking to the metro last night on my way home, and I got a phone call, and it was from somebody I'd been prospecting, a retired lieutenant colonel, and I got him an interview today. He called me. I said, I had this opportunity. You interested? Show me your resume. Okay, I'll put it in front of him, and we were able to schedule him for an interview. And that was great, because I did a soldier solid. I did, another veteran, somebody like me, and I was able to find him a job, and or at least give him the opportunity for a job, is what maybe the better way to say that. And that just, those are the moments that make everything worthwhile.
Yeah,
That's
a cool
fantastic.
industry. That's the best part about our industry, being able to do it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that really impressed me about you when we connected on LinkedIn. We're in a sense we're competitors, but when I told you what our mission was of helping veterans, you're like, whatever you need from me, I'm here to help you. I want to serve and give back, and I love that. I love that, how you guys look out for one another,
Oh
and
yeah.
you want to pay it forward.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. And yes, I would say, if you really wanted to be technical, we're competitors. But the reality is, there's never going to be there's never going to be an end of job seekers. There's never going to be an end of soldiers transitioning out and sailors transitioning out and needing of help finding a job. So it's not like we're competing. We're in the same boat,
Yeah.
man. We're fishing from the same pond. That's all.
Yep, you got it. When you're not working, what do you like to do? What are some of your hobbies, your interests?
Well, this is going to sound terrible, and people are going to go, "What?" But my my hobbies and interests for the past 4 years have been politics, and I'm not going to talk about it, here, obviously, but this has been a target-rich environment for people that are geeks about politics like me these past several years. I'll tell you that for a fact.
Hey,
Um,
Yeah. Well, where you live, I guess you have to. You can't. You can't escape it, right?
That's true. It is hard to escape.
Yeah. What about recreationally? You like to be outside, play sports?
Oh God, I'm at the point in my life where everything is the warranty is off and the parts are falling apart. And so every time I think about things that I used to like to do, it's like, no, that just hurts too much. I don't want to do that anymore. And of course, the last year, let's be realistic. Everybody's indoors as much as they can be, but yes, I do like I love the woods and the forests here and the streams, and I love to be able to get out and walk around. And one of the best things about being in the infantry when I was a kid was, well, I started out in the cavalry, but then went to infantry as a young lieutenant, was just that we were always out in the woods, out in nature, whatever that was.
Yeah.
And whether we had, gone to the desert or gone to the jungle or whatever, just being out there and living in it, that was one of the best things ever. Even if it was raining, it was still cool.
You still enjoyed it. And then I'm sure it was a big part of your childhood too. Like you said, playing cowboys and Indian or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like the kids today. I have a 13-year-old, and it's a chore to get them to go outside. They just want to sit in front of that.
Yeah,
Xbox.
I know.
Yeah.
My kids are all in their 20s and almost 30, one of them. And so they're all gone and grown up. But when they were younger, we lived on a lake, and just having that experience of them being outside was fantastic.
Yeah, that's nice. That's awesome. Well, hey, I can't thank you enough, Mike, man, to share your story and all this great advice that you're giving back, and it means a lot to me. And I'm super excited that we know each other, to be able to collaborate with you and hopefully help more veterans together.
That's absolutely it. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I appreciate the opportunity to know you, and to, if we can feed each other with veterans and, help each other, help these guys get jobs. That's fantastic. That's all what it's all about.
That's awesome. Thanks again, buddy.
Thanks a lot. Adios.